All right. Well, welcome back. My gosh,
It's
been a long time. So this is our first official in-person session of Buildcast since 2020.
Right.
Last year, as many of you may know, we shifted gears a little bit and worked with Homemade to put on a series about the 12 causes of homelessness, which was a great series. Love doing that.
Amazing.
But now here we are. Lots changed. The mullet's gone.
The mullet's gone.
Yeah. Interesting year last year, but ready to really dig in this year. So welcome back.
Yeah,
excited
coming
to be here.
off IBS and our
Yes.
first episode rerun. I think everyone probably experienced a little bit of everything with that week, and it was good to be back in person with all of our building partners from across the country.
Correct. And if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check out episode 1, which is a compilation of all of the fun that we had at IBS. So that was a great event. Love the energy, love the excitement. So, all right. Well, today, new home construction starts jumped 6.8%, which is a whopping. Everybody raise your hands when you hear the word whopping today. A whopping 22% from this time last year. That is the fastest growth rate in home building since 2006, according to data released on Thursday. Today, we've got some really cool guests I'm really excited about. We are joined by one of Central Texas' fastest growing custom homes, our good friend Grayson Smith, co-founder and owner of Coregon Building Company. Welcome, Grayson.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, really excited to have you. And we also are joined by our good friend David Tamm. David Tamm, the only way I can describe it is he's the owner, founder, creator of like 100 different companies. So I'll let you, expand on that, but I can't possibly remember the superlatives in the list that he has. So David, we're really glad to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me as well. How's everybody doing?
Really well.
We are good. It's a gorgeous day to be in Austin, Texas.
Yes,
Amen.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's jump in and talk about what it takes to grow a home building company despite all the issues, supply chain, labor shortages, all of that kind of stuff, record lumber prices, and you've heard me say this a million times. It's much easier to sell a house right now, but it's much more difficult. It's in my opinion, never been more difficult to build a house.
Correct. I would agree.
So let's dig right in.
Yeah. Grayson, I think we can count on you for the experience over the past 2 to 3 years and the growth that Coregon Building Company has seen. Would you share with us a little bit about who you are and where you build?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're a custom home builder based out of downtown Georgetown. Started about 5 years ago and grew very organically. We started with a couple homes in downtown Georgetown and it really just expanded from there. I'd say the style of home that we kind of hit the market with was what stimulated that growth. We kind of offered a little bit more contemporary bend on the architecture that you see.
And one of the first in Georgetown to really do that. And really all points north of Austin, there just wasn't that much, contemporary, soft contemporary, or modern at the time.
Outside of downtown,
Correct.
you don't see that quite as much as you all have brought to the market in the past few years.
Yeah. And it's kind of what started the whole company, and the relationships that we had going into all this was just my brother, Jim, one of the other founders of Coregon, and bringing just that design element. And it just took off from there.
And that's one of the key points, I think, when we talk about Coregon, just full transparency, Coregon is also a client of Social Strategies, Thrive Mortgage, and Cast Services. So we intimately understand the brand and where you all have started and where you're at now. David, why don't you share a little bit just in your experience in watching Grayson and aligning with their efforts from a digital marketing perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I look at, by the way, for all the listeners, I implore you, go to this website, Coregon, Coregon, buildingcompany.com. And you're going to see their website to kind of set the stage for what I'm going to talk about. Yeah, got introduced with Grayson years ago when it was just a build or two in tandem. You're 10x that right now or something to that effect. And you're one of these young, vibrant new construction companies, which are adjectives you normally don't use for new home builders, right? But that's what's allowed you to essentially scale by listening to your clients, listening to your prospects, and then delivering what they're looking for, opposed to say, this is what I have, take it or leave it. And then that is also kind of dovetailed in the digital space, right? The plasticity of how we have evolved your digital strategy over the last 3 years is pretty incredible, from a full website retool to something that loads incredibly fast, to doing social media and marketing at a very high level, all the way into your internals, right? To your CRM and how you treat your clients and over communicate with your clients, right? So that you're delivering a higher level of service. It's not all just window dressing. So I can go down this path and talk for hours. What I would prefer you do is, why don't you pepper me with a few questions and I can give you some answers, and really for the listeners, some ideas about how you can elevate your digital strategy like Coregon has done over the last few years.
Well, before you get into all the little nitty gritty stuff, talk a little bit about, how did you guys get connected? Because I know we all know each other individually, but how did you all get connected with each other? How did that happen?
Go ahead.
Probably through my brother Landon.
Yeah.
He's kind of like David's got his hands in a lot of different things, and what I love about him is he's very relational, and he has a gift of bringing people together, and that's kind of how it started with Cass, and then from there, Natalie, obviously Ashlyn, Thrive, and so yeah, it was really, again, an organic thing, and a little bit of an unconventional way of a builder coming to the market. Normally, it's just, guy who's really good at building houses, and while we definitely have that, we connected with other areas of the market, from real estate development, marketing, and brought that in a lot faster than you may see with other startup building companies.
Well, yeah, usually it's, or frequently it can be a admin assistant or somebody throwing pictures up on Facebook, and that's your marketing and advertising, and one of the things we really like to talk about is the evolution of home building, and that includes how it's sold and how it's marketed and all that. So that's why I'm kind of really excited to talk about it, because I think there's so many builders out there right now, good builders. They build beautiful product that go, okay, well, if I'm doing 4 or 5 homes a year, how do I build more? And like I said, it's, I need to clarify a little bit. I say it's easier to sell a house than it's ever been, and that's probably not fair. But the fact of the matter is the buyer market is so flooded right now, it's not always going to be that way. So I think as we start to see the market taper off, how we market is going to be critically important. So I'll get off my soapbox, but let's dig in.
That's one thing too, I think, with Grayson and Coregon, David, I'm sure you'll agree as well, is commending on being willing to think outside of a box that traditional home builders typically work within, right? I.e., a group of professionals and experts within the industry from multiple markets and with multiple skill sets coming in, and you folding this group together with Landon and understanding that it is not what happens in 4 walls in one office in one market, that by expanding that, you expand your, like David was speaking to, your digital reach, your social media reach, your CRM implementation, and then how the group came together all through connection, right? Organically. So there was a lot, I believe, from start to finish. And I came in just a year or 2 ago, but from start to finish that we're seeing in the home building industry, and home builders understanding that the old way is not now. And it doesn't serve our buyers. It doesn't serve the challenges that you face. It might be something good to jump into is part of the challenges. I think our listeners want to hear that. Right now you've got 23 custom homes under construction, which in this market is astronomical given, the lack of land, trade issues, supply and materials. So what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Just one.
Oh, I know, right? Okay, let's narrow it into 2
How about
to
the
3.
top? Yeah, the top 2 or 3 would be good.
I mean, obviously the labor shortage, that's a challenging one. Supply chain, everything that everyone at this point knows about is all very challenging. I mean, literally just this morning, when I was heading into the office, I got an email from I'd emailed a warranty department of this company that we use to install gutters, and the guy responded and he said, sorry, we don't have any more installers. We've actually shut down this part of our department. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have any installers? And it's just, and so it was, okay, well, now I got to send this email to a different gutter company that we use. And it may not seem like a big deal, just that one thing, but that sort of thing happens, I mean, multiple times every single day. And so, whether it's, hey, we ordered your windows and you find out, 2 weeks before they're going to get delivered that, the supplier forgot one window, and you're like, okay, well, I need to, get the mechanicals done, everything. And so all that stuff, again, it's not, one thing isn't the challenge, because we've dealt with that since we got started. I mean, people made mistakes, but it's just now it's gotten way worse as far as, lead times, turnaround times, and being able to recover from those mistakes is tough. And so
how does that parlay into the communication and keeping the buyer feeling empowered, and the trust factor? How have you overcome that?
We do our best to over communicate. We use I mean, most people in real estate, we call it CRM. It's basically the same thing on the building side. We do daily logs, pictures, and, setting expectations as best we can. We let them know the challenges that we're facing. But at the end of the day, there's so much that's out of your control. It's hard to basically set expectations for everything, because
that communication, I think, is absolutely critical, because what happens is the clients can sometimes go, okay, wait a minute. No news is never good news, or they go out to the house and they don't see, 20 different trades sitting out there. Oh my gosh, Coregon's not working on my house. They're off doing something else. We were talking earlier that we all get paid on closing a loan and building a house. So we all want to get from point A to point B. But that's where I think it's a really important question, is how do you keep that balance, making sure those clients feel connected during a difficult, stressful process, because it's very difficult, stressful for us, but, equally so, or at least in a different way for clients, they're stressed. Absolutely. It's very emotional, what's going on. So I think that communication, if you guys are doing that on a regular basis, can really help.
Yeah. I mean, that's for me, that's one of the best things and one of the most important things, especially our project managers, but it starts from the beginning of the job, is just communicating. And what's challenging on our end is that sometimes you don't know if something's an issue while it's an issue.
Sure.
So if you're dealing with a problem, do you communicate that or do you not? In what point in time do you communicate that? Because you don't want to alarm somebody if you think you can work all the way through that. And so oftentimes our communication is, should we tell them or should we not tell them?
It's a great point.
Again, they may never know that was something was borderline going to be
not going. Yeah. And it causes undue stress. Like Brian, to your point, if a buyer comes out, and David, I know, is going to chime in because he is closing on his new home this week. When a buyer comes out and they don't see a trade, or like you said, let's say I'm 2 days out from closing and a window's not in. Oh my gosh. Right. I'm going over the edge, but it's that balance as the builder on, do we communicate that? Do we cause that next stress, or do we wait and pause and see if that vendor B comes out quickly? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah. I mean, and again, it sounds like a cop-out excuse, and I understand why, but so much literally is outside of our control.
Sure. It's true.
I mean, we have one house that has a temporary certificate of occupancy right now and has for 60 days because in this city, they require grass to grow. And so it was too dry and we overseeded.
This is new, guys, even
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. It's City of Leander. If you have to pass building finals, grass has to be growing if you overseed it in disturbed areas.
Wow.
And lack of rain until about a couple of weeks ago, we still don't have a final CO.
That's why you do sod, Grayson. Come on.
Yeah, great point. We didn't think of that. So,
I'm sure you did.
yeah, next time.
Yeah, next time, right.
I'm curious, David, in the process and with you being so close to the finish line, did you have to have grass growing in your yard to close on your home?
No, so we're down in Castle Rock, luckily, and everything's pretty much rocks. I think they give us like 2 shrubs that you're responsible for, and if I'm gonna kill those 2 shrubs, like guaranteed, right? So, no, but we experienced that same kind of roller coaster over the last year with all the supply chain issues, and we literally were missing a window. That exact same case until 48 hours ago, right? And it's out of their control. So for me, I was just very transparent with the builder, with the loan officer, with everybody else involved. I was like, hey, I'm going to give you the rules of engagement. Over communicate, right? If you think it's going to affect the timeline, let me know, right? I have a military background. I'm not going to panic, I promise. I would like to be in the know so I can make intelligent decisions. But Grayson, you're in the hot seat, man. Like you have to make that call for every single client, every single waypoint. You know what I mean? And so what do you recommend? Is it an interpersonal thing based off of the relationship with a client, or do you have kind of more standards of this is what we communicate and this is what we don't? I'm curious.
So we have certain processes that we follow during the build where, we make sure things are captured inside the house. But really, it's we have a sales guy. His name's Justin, and he does a great job of maintaining that communication and understanding the client, because every one of them is different. I mean, some of them they can handle that, some of them they can't.
Right.
Some of you, if you bring that up, I mean, it's almost pointless because you won't make any progress because you're dealing with how to handle them.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. I don't blame him again for reacting to a situation like that. But those things we do take into consideration in how we communicate, because you can't say the same thing to everyone across the board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd just say again, it depends.
Well, and I think one of the game changers, Grayson, for you guys and for everyone on the team is what you said, tapping into that communication. And is that coming through the CRM? Is that coming through the builder platforms that you use? How is that coming out? And then catering that based over time to how we tell people and when we tell people. David, I'm the polar opposite, which and that I don't want to know until it's absolute catastrophe, because I'm going to stress out.
But you know what I think, going back, and David, you mentioned it briefly already. I don't know if you guys caught that, but he made a really good point that he wanted communication between builder, lender himself, and I think who is involved in that communication. We've talked about this a lot. Mm-hmm. Who is involved is critically important, right? So because we want that symbiotic relationship between realtor, builder, lender, and client.
Great point.
And instead of creating this animosity that's always, or friction, we'll say, to put it a little bit nicer, between these different parts of the same process. Now we're all working together in concert with each other. Mm-hmm. We all understand, the realtor understands from up front until the back end. That way you don't have them coming 2 weeks before closing and telling you all the things that need to be done. So, but yeah, I think including as many of those parties is really important.
Yeah. And that's, part of I think the marketing outreach that Grayson has put the directive towards is realtors, is lenders, is the partners that are with the company. And I know from a social media aspect, when we're talking through the brand voice and narrative, what we're looking at is how are we communicating, right? Correct. With the realtor? How are we communicating with the buyer? And then how are we also educating them?
And the onus is on all of us to do that, not just, hey, Coregon, you do it. Thrive Mortgage and Ashlyn Kelso, who does all of your loans, of course. But yeah, I mean, the responsibility is all of ours
Yeah.
to create that level of communication.
It is. And that goes back to what we were saying, David, with and Brian in our previous podcasts and talks, is how are we building that synergy? And then
Yeah.
how are the builders receptive to implementing that? Right.
I have a feeling we're going to have a whole conversation on a whole episode on that one. So
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a lot of
box there.
Go ahead. What's that?
Well, it's hard because I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, having that synergy and everyone working together is extremely important. And having a background in real estate, I mean, I still have my license. I understand you want to have title involved, the lender involved, everyone. So like we all know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
In a builder's world, they're dealing with not just that one problem. They're dealing with
Sure.
50 problems. And
Sure.
so what I've told people in the past is your problem is important, but the time they spend trying to explain to you why it's important or what's going on, they're not spending fixing it.
Good
And
point.
so
Yeah.
that's where I think you butt heads with homeowners a lot. It's like, you didn't communicate with me. Well, I'm trying to figure this out. I can't tell you the 20 steps back and forth with this trade to get this issue resolved, and at the same time communicate that to you.
Well, because it's
And-
not just you. I mean, how
Right.
many trades do you think are involved in the average custom home?
I mean, it would have to be several hundred people
Exactly.
walking in and out of that
and that's a
house.
lot of different people that you have to, a lot of different personalities and
Yes.
workflows and all that. And sometimes you have to rely on them to get those updates. So yeah, it's not as cut and dry. Absolutely.
No, on average, your standard build has 1 million moving parts in it. 1 million. And like you said, how do you communicate that? How do
Yeah.
you say, there's so many, but I think that you got, Coregon itself is doing just that through sending the photo updates, right? David and his team on the digital side and how the messaging, what the branding goes out, and then the lender partnership coming in and everyone, even though it seems impossible, mission impossible, it's working.
Well,
Mhm.
And it's working well for you.
Yeah, well, I think with Cast and the marketing side of things, I mean, because it's not all bad. I mean, there are success stories that come out of this.
Oh, yeah.
And what I tell people is your house will get built. I mean,
yes.
we're all in this together trying to achieve the same thing. And so I think that's where having focus on the marketing side and Cast, what they do, and helping facilitate that end of it is extremely important, because people need to see that, when they're doing their research on who they want to build with. There is a lot of amazing builders out there in Georgetown area and Central Texas, and everyone has their same approach, and some things work for them that wouldn't work for us, and vice
That's a
versa.
great point.
And for us, just coming from the approach that we have, being able to get as much of our product out there and our process out there on the front end is extremely important, because you want to set the right expectations.
Sure.
You want to minimize surprises. And so for me, that's always been something that's extremely important.
So speaking of getting product out there, I think, David, it's time we pick on you for a little bit. But so now that we've done a really good job setting the stage of all the challenges and problems, let's talk about, really what, your approach and what your strategies are to help builders.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And for the authenticity, Grayson, you're right. It's not all good, but there are a lot of success stories out there. And honestly, between you and I think you've done a fantastic job of leveraging technology, just not on just the front end to make yourself appear, articulate in the building space as you are, but on the back end, on the lead flow and the management of your current contracts and how the analytics of where you guys are now. I don't know other new construction entities that are at that level, that follow up with your tempo and rigor to be able to go, 1,000% growth essentially from when we started until we are now. So kudos on that. But when we're talking about the front end for new construction, it all really does start with your website, right? Well, we consider your digital footprint. So it's not just your website, but people, when they're engaging with your product because when they're registering on your website, newsflash, they're registering on 4 to 6 others, your direct competition in that same geographic region. That's what the data shows. So your website, it needs to be screaming fast. It needs to have a modern design. It needs to not have high resolution looping video in the hero section to slow it down on mobile, like so many of the builders do, because they think that's what people want. They don't. They want a fast site with a good user experience. And then we do a lot of analytics and testing. We're watching with heat map tracking where people are engaging on a site, where are they falling off, right? That's why you see, if you go to the Coregon Building Company website, the lead form is above the fold, and we minimize the fields there. We've got a strong value proposition. We've got a clickable phone number in the hero section, right? That stays with you as you scroll. This is important. And what's required for the end consumer, right, the home purchaser, to give that path of least resistance. So those are the fundamentals. And then what we want to do is trickle those best practices out into your social media presence, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Google business listing, right? With your most recent builds, pictures, and then I'm writing a book on the subject, testimonials. Your past clients, how you engage them and capture authentic, emotional testimonials as they're getting this beautiful new home that they've saved up their entire life for, right? That's a big deal. And I feel like a lot of the new construction players out there, it's, hey, just give me a 5-star review on Google. No,
it's an afterthought
Right.
at most, and these people are they should be some of your best salespeople for your product, but you have to make sure that they're taken care of all along the way, like we've been talking about,
Right.
including the warranty department and all that and beyond. And I think a lot of us have just, have not given it the due attention that it deserves.
Totally. So let me just speak on that very briefly. For everybody that's listening, steal my methodology and best practices, because all it's going to do is make the industry better, right? We want to push each other forward. It's the reason we're bringing thought leaders onto this podcast to talk about this kind of stuff, is to make the industry better. I truly believe that. So when you're asking for a review, do not use the R word. It's a slap in the face, right? Ask them for feedback. Have a conversation. And then when they start to brag about you and love on you a little bit, then that's when it's appropriate to, hey, listen, we would love to articulate that on, Google, if I send you a link, et cetera, whatever. But if you can set up a really quick interview on video to have a dialogue, some actual discourse of how was it working with us? What went right? What was your favorite part? What's your favorite part of the build? That is an asset that then you can use on your website, on your social media, in your email marketing, in your print material, on your business cards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Right. So one of the things that Coregon did really, really well was always communicating with their clients and getting feedback and listening, right, to their current builds, so that we can evolve over time, opposed to, this is my storefront, if you don't like what we have, get out, kind of deal. And that I am in the process of building home right now. I know it. Okay. So I'll get off my soapbox. What questions do you have on that?
I'd like to add, David, to that. And I know she'll love that we're giving her a shout out. Just an example of what Coregon has done to build the conversational relationship throughout the home building process. Live, love, Lauren. She is one of Coregon's home buyers. She regularly will do video content. She does posts. She shares it out, and she's walking her network through the experience. And by default, she's educating those on how this goes, what to expect, the highs and the lows. And then, what that comes from is the relationship that has been built, David, exactly to your point. Instead of going in and saying, give us the referral, it's something that's been nurtured throughout the entire process. So we're talking, I'm gonna corny on this one. What's the average build time right now for a custom home, Central Texas?
Oh, that's one of those great questions, like what's your cost per square foot?
And Grayson's
Every
gonna
builder
go,
loves that
I
question.
don't know, Natalie, what's the weather look like 2 months from now?
Yeah. Another builder once told me, he was like, I just respond with how much the cart of groceries cost.
Oh, there you go. I know that's a good point.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Somebody'd say,
we've knocked out like a standard custom build in 300 days.
okay,
Which
is healthy.
we tell people, now 10 months, 12 months, somewhere a year or so.
Yep.
There's issues, but it can be done quickly. And what I've told people is the homeowner, have a large part in that too.
Mhm.
Everyone hates it, but change orders do cost typically more time than they cost money.
They stop
Right.
the production like that. Yeah.
So, and experience is all relative too. That's another challenge, is that most people only build one custom house.
Right.
And
Oh, that's true.
they have nothing
Yeah.
to compare it to. So what might be a good experience for one person because of how they go
Yep.
into it might be different for another.
Absolutely. And that circles back, David, to what you were speaking to is, rather than having that end result review that's after 12 to 14 months, you're walking through, and I would say Lauren probably posts, I would say 2 to 3 times a week.
Wow.
And so that's a part of that relationship, that communication. It brings everything, from the start of Coregon to the teams that were implemented, whether it's lender, marketing, social media, you name it. But all of that has created that 1,000% growth. Right. Because at the end of the day, a builder was willing to take the time and go out and build this as they go, based on home buyer and I'm going to call it revolutionary practices, because some home builders, I can tell you, we still have where they will do traffic reports and they're writing it on a piece of paper. Like we're past that. So kudos to you.
So Natalie, let's talk a little bit specifically about the social media side. That is your expertise. That's where you live. That's where you work. Let's talk about that real quick and dig into how do we effectively engage with home buyers today?
Yeah. And that's, I'm going to play off, David, some of the points that you made as well, and Grayson, and bring it all back to that social media, presence. How are we speaking to our followers per se, which, David, when you said, don't use the word, hey, can you give us a review? I hate the word followers, and I use that intentionally. They're not followers. They're people that are supporting your livelihood.
Yeah.
And the more that we are engaged with them, not just from a, hey, I'm posting every day on social media and showing a gorgeous custom Coregon home, but I'm also, and the brand is also, we're going to their pages, we're talking to them, we're supporting their life, right? And so it becomes a symbiotic relationship that organically will expand a brand. So it's not as easy as, hey, I'm going to go put a post on social media and everyone's going to follow me and love me.
Instant fan base.
I wish.
Yeah.
And I wish from a workflow standpoint, it was that easy. It is a dedication to time and understanding through an authentic voice and interaction with others. And then what content are you putting out there? Because, I can see 1 million homes in a day, but what's interesting to me? And then furthermore, what am I hashtagging? David and Grayson and I were on a call not too long ago, and we were going back and forth on how the search engine optimization and the keywords, we learn from each other.
Yeah.
Cass, David, myself, Grayson. Are we hashtagging Texas luxury homes? Are we hashtagging architectural design, if I can say
architectural
that? But that all plays out in what audience you reach through those posts and through the engagement. So
and this is really kind of for both you and David, but so that's all great and dandy.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking to builders that don't have experience with this, how do you convert that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you take all of that activity you just talked about and convert it into actual leads?
Yeah. David, you want to take the...
Yeah, absolutely. I raised my hand and was like, pick me. So I'm going back all the way up to the very beginning of this. You had a mullet? Is that correct?
It really wasn't.
It was a mullet.
No, it was not. No, that would require only in the back. My hair was just very long.
It was really kind of the California surfer look, David.
Yeah,
he had the blonde wisp at the end. Yeah.
So you hit on something really, really important, and I want the listeners to key in on this. It's communication between who's running your front-facing marketing, your social media, potentially your SEO. Like, if it's not the same person, those people need to be talking together, right? Because it is a symbiotic entity. Your marketing is, right? And a lot of times there's carryover and cross-pollination where we can take $1 and turn it into 3, right? From a marketing perspective. And somebody like Grayson, that's a big happy smile on his face, right? Because he's getting more for less in a shorter amount of time with respect to traction in the digital space. So let me explain that. When we're talking about a website, that it should load fast. It's got all the conversion elements that we talked about. it needs to start ranking for things. So the type of content that you're going to push out onto your website needs to be germane to that geographic region, your type of build, and the clientele, as well as your competitive environment, right? Anybody that's worth their salt in the SEO space, they'll be doing all of this stuff like we do for Grayson already. But that then needs to be in communication and linked with your social strategy, right? What Natalie was talking about, the keywords that we select to build the content that we do is fueled by oftentimes the lead flow and the traction that we get on social, and vice versa, right? So because people are registering on so many websites, because they're vetting people, right? Very rarely, Grayson, would I say that, hey, listen, we saw one of your builds and you're the only builder that we're talking to and we're signing today. It's pretty rare. They shop around, as they should. It's a competitive marketplace. And so by creating a path of least resistance on your website with those conversion elements fueled by social media, the lead flow that we see is pretty substantial in organic registrations, but on the site itself that was driven there oftentimes by the social media marketing, right? Because they might send a direct message, and they oftentimes do because it's pretty high level social that Natalie runs, very high level, I should say. But oftentimes they'll just say, I'm going to pivot over, and they go to the website. Because it's a really good user experience and it loads fast, and it indexes on page 1 and page 2 for all those really cool new construction terms like build custom home in Georgetown, which you do rank on page 1 for. That allows the lead flow, but that's only part of the battle. But now that we've got the lead, what are we doing with it? And I hate that we call them leads. They're people, the relationships, right? So we're going to use that term kind of colloquially internally here as the lead itself then needs to be followed up with in a really rigorous fashion, and it needs to be documented in a CRM. And this is where Grayson and his team, Justin, are crushing it, right? Compared to, it's usually a pretty bad experience. When somebody registers on a new construction website, they may or may not get a phone call. They may or may not get a text message. They're definitely going to get some spammy email marketing that'll fall off after 30 days, and that's it, right? We're following up with people a year after they registered with germane information to try and meet them where they are to see if we're a good fit. That's practice.
So since we are pretty much out of time, so let's do kind of our typical closing though, and let's talk about, okay, so we've got builders that are listening to this, whether they're building 5 homes a year or 50 or whatnot. What's the best way to get started?
Grayson, why don't you lead with that? I'll follow. I've got some thoughts.
Very, very surface level, but or high level overview, I should say.
I mean, probably delegate if you're starting out. I mean,
that's a good point.
Don't try and do it all yourself, because you're not good at everything. I mean, I think that's what kind of made us a little bit stronger at the outset was, we focus on design guy did this. We had someone who was very involved in real estate and trying to find land, and he did that. Not saying you may not have that all in one place, but if you're just one guy, go reach out and build those relationships and partnerships with people who can kind of take stuff off your plate.
That's why you engaged, Natalie in social strategies and David Tamm in CAF services, right? That's what they are. They are experts in their field, and that's delegation by paying for it, of course.
But it's funny because you listen to David talk and still like some of the terms he uses, even having those conversations at length, I'm like, well, I don't know what he's talking about.
He's too smart for
right, but that's good.
Sure, absolutely.
That makes me happy because it's like, okay, well, he knows his stuff.
And we all grow. That's I think partly off Grayson, and your question is, the willingness and the receptivity to understanding what is your shop and how to run it and what is your expertise. And when we're all on a monthly call, there are often times this is a David Tamm effect where you go, what did he just say? And we all are continuously evolving and learning with a common goal of launching a home building company. So my best advice goes back to Brian, what you said at the beginning. Please don't choose the admin in the office to handle your marketing and your social media. While it might be cost effective on the front end, in the long run, flipping it over to you, David, what may cost you $18 per lead could quite possibly quickly come down to $1 to $3 per lead.
You're not building
by
a brand
taking
that way.
and
Yeah.
hiring the
Yeah.
right people.
Totally. I'm gonna give one piece of advice for everybody that's in new construction. Please keep an open mind. Technology is accelerating faster than it ever has before in the history of the human race. And so when we're talking about things like websites and CRMs and automation, all this kind of stuff, keep an open mind. Don't be intimidated by it, because if you embrace it, you can also be a Coregon building company and thousands of % increase.
That's a whopping good way to end the episode. So come on, where's your hands?
I know.
Well, David, Grayson, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate all the great conversation and your time, and everything you guys contribute to our industry. Natalie, so good to have you back in the studio again.
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's going to be a great season.
It
So please join us for our next episode. We are going to talk about manufactured housing, the evolution of attainable housing, and really what impact that will be playing going forward. So join us as we have some great guests coming up. So
We do. Great guests. We will do the first reveal of the guest new product line. So stay tuned.
What you think. So be sure to watch. And
what do we say? It's not your grandma's trailer.
it's not your. You just said the trailer word.
Did.
It's manufactured housing. Anyway, that's a wrap. Again, thanks everybody for joining us.
Awesome. Good job. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.